It is Women's College World Series time, always a fun time in Oklahoma City. From the Opoka Studios, I'm Dave Morris, and I'm honored to be joined by Mariah Gearhart, Oklahoma State softball player extraordinaire, and she will provide an interesting perspective as we go through this tournament. 4 games yesterday of Game 1 of the tournament, and we saw all the lower seeds win, but I guess the big story coming out of Day 1 was the illegal pitches. First of all, go through what an illegal pitch is.
Well, there's 3 things that can create an illegal pitch. One of them is if you are out of the lanes that extend from both ends of the rubber, if your foot is completely out, that's an illegal pitch. But that wasn't the case yesterday. Yesterday, what we saw was what is called crow hopping, and that is where the back foot of the pitcher comes off of the rubber and off of the ground, making both feet up in the air. And that's what Braunbacher from Florida and Kenzie Fowler from Arizona were doing, is instead of keeping their back foot and making a drag off of the rubber, they were lifting up and creating both feet, and that makes an illegal pitch.
And they say that that is illegal because it creates more momentum, I guess, for the pitching. All right, now you played third base for Oklahoma State, and most of these calls yesterday, I guess all the calls yesterday for illegal pitches came from the third base umpire. Give us a perspective of what you see from that position of the diamond.
Well, ironically, you really can tell exactly from that angle, and that's why it is the third base umpire that makes that call most of the time, and especially if you're in the third base dugout. And that's where we were able to see, actually, it happened to a lot of pitchers at the beginning of the season, probably in early March in our tournaments, is when it started being called a lot. And they were really strict during that tournament, and primarily because they're being strict now. I mean, it's been really strongly enforced this year. And I'll say you really can tell from that angle if their foot is completely off the ground. If you can see air in between the foot and the dirt, I mean, it's not that hard to miss.
Game 1 yesterday saw Hawaii, and you have friends on that squad, take out Missouri. Take us through that game.
Well, that game was very intense. Probably my favorite game of the day. And basically, I'll say Hawaii went in dramatic fashion again. I'll say it was a really tight game. I'll say Hawaii went up and then Missouri went up. And Missouri pretty much kind of just had to hold Hawaii in the 7th inning. And Hawaii, once again, dramatic fashion, 2-run home run to put them ahead. They held Mizzou in the last inning and came out with the win.
Hawaii plays UCLA tonight at 6 o'clock at Hall of Fame Stadium. Hawaii's been living by the long ball all season. Last night, UCLA crushed Florida 16-3. How does that set up for tonight?
Well, it would be really interesting to see what the pitching does, because obviously everyone thought that the matchup between Mizzou and Hawaii was going to be a slugfest. And the pitching actually stepped up and really held that offense to a low score. So UCLA is going to be trying to be doing the same thing. Keeping Hawaii to just 3 runs was amazing for Missouri. But obviously, Stephanie Ricketts was able to keep Missouri to a really low score as well. And so it'll be interesting to see if Ricketts is able to come out or Hawaii's freshman pitcher is able to hold UCLA's very high-powered offense as well.
Tennessee blanked Arizona last night 9-0 in Game 3. And Florida and Arizona were the 2 schools that were called for the illegal pitches. 8 against Arizona, 6 against Florida, I believe. But you brought up a good point as you sat in on those post-game press conferences yesterday and last night. What happened to their offense?
Honestly, what I saw from the pitcher was she really kept them off balance. I would say she came in and was throwing a lot of different pitches, really good sequences. Ivy Renfro has basically been a freshman phenom this year, and she came in mixing the pitches well, keeping them off balance with her speed too. She throws a lot harder than what Arizona's seen, and Mike Andrea mentioned that it's probably a lot harder pitching than they've seen in the past couple weeks. I mean, Ivy can hit up to 70 miles per hour, and so doing that, and then plus mixing speeds, throwing different pitches and giving different sequences, I think that's what really kept the Arizona hitters off balance.
And the nightcap last night was the dramatic finish as Georgia knocked off the defending champion Washington team 6-3. And that was pretty dramatic there late, wasn't it?
Definitely. I say they had the score tied up 3-3. I mean, Washington went ahead early 3-0, and most people in the park were like, oh, it's done deal. Lori will hold them. So Georgia came back with their bats and tied up the score. And in dramatic fashion, Megan Wiggins comes up with a 3-run home run to put them ahead, and then they were able to hold Washington in the bottom 7th.
And that sets up tonight's winners bracket games again. Hawaii versus UCLA at 6 o'clock. And then the late game tonight at 8 o'clock is Tennessee versus Georgia. One note from yesterday, she mentioned Lori. That's Washington's ace, Danielle Lori, named National Player of the Year again yesterday. You'll be with us all weekend and throughout the summer. It's great to have you for the softball coverage, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Enjoy the games, everybody.